Welcome back to Capital Catch-Up, your weekly deep dive into the machinery of Washington. I'm Victor.
And I'm Lenny. It is looking like a very busy start to February 2026, Victor. If I had to pick a theme for the massive stack of legislation dropped on the House floor this week, it would be one word: housing.
You aren't kidding. We are seeing a legislative blitz aimed at tackling the housing crisis from almost every conceivable angle. We have over a dozen bills introduced, ranging from veteran support to regulatory overhauls. Let's start with the veterans, because that's a major focus here.
Right. We have House Resolution 224, the Disabled Veterans Housing Support Act, and House Resolution 965, the Housing Unhoused Disabled Veterans Act. These represent a push to close the gaps in the safety net for those who served. We've seen similar initiatives in the past, but the specificity here, targeting disabled veterans specifically, suggests that the current broad-stroke programs aren't catching everyone.
It's about tailoring the aid to the need. And speaking of tailoring aid, House Resolution 2362, the VA Home Loan Awareness Act, is interesting. It's not just about creating a benefit. It's about making sure veterans actually know it exists. Bureaucracy often hides benefits, and this bill aims to fix the communication breakdown.
But looking at the broader market, Victor, the bills that might impact the average civilian home buyer the most are the ones dealing with supply. We have House Resolution 4659, the Identifying Regulatory Barriers to Housing Supply Act, and House Resolution 4660, the Unlocking Housing Supply Through Streamlined and Modernized Reviews Act.
That is a mouthful, Lenny.
It is, but the impact is huge. These bills are attacking the red tape we always hear about: zoning restrictions, environmental review delays, the things that make building new homes slow and expensive. If these pass, we could see a shift in how quickly developers can break ground. It builds on the arguments we've heard for years that the housing crisis is fundamentally a supply problem.
Absolutely. And there is one more housing bill I want to highlight because it addresses a very specific, often overlooked issue: House Resolution 1640, the Heirs Act of 2025.
Oh, this is a critical one.
It really is. It deals with heirs' property, land passed down through generations without a clear will or title. This has historically disproportionately affected African American families in the South and rural communities. Without clear title, you can't get a mortgage, you can't get FEMA aid after a disaster, and you can't sell. The Heirs Act aims to help families clear those titles. This is a massive step toward generational wealth preservation.
That's a great example of technical legislation having a profound human impact. Before we move off housing, I noticed House Resolution 638, the Housing Temperature Safety Act. With the extreme weather shifts we've seen, ensuring heating and cooling standards aren't just about comfort anymore. They're about survival.
Moving over to committee work, the schedule for early February is packed with oversight hearings that signal a very aggressive approach to regulation and foreign policy.
The Financial Services Committee is holding a hearing titled A New Day at the SEC, Restoring Accountability, Due Process, and Public Confidence. Just from the title, you can tell this is going to be a grilling of the Securities and Exchange Commission.
It suggests the committee feels the SEC has overstepped. On a similar note of regulatory friction, the Judiciary Committee is holding Europe's Threat to American Speech and Innovation, Part 2. This is likely addressing the European Union's digital market regulations and how they impact U.S. tech giants, and by extension, American users' data and speech rights. It's a transatlantic clash playing out in a committee room.
We also have some high-voltage social issues coming up. House Resolution 1028, the Protection of Women in Olympic and Amateur Sports Act, is slated for consideration. This feeds directly into the ongoing national debate regarding gender and athletics, and paired with that hearing is House Joint Resolution 139.
For our listeners who might not know, a House Joint Resolution, or HJRES, is a legislative measure that requires approval by both the House and Senate and is presented to the President for approval. It has the force of law. But in this case, HJRES 139 is proposing a constitutional amendment for a balanced budget. Constitutional amendments don't go to the President. They go to the states for ratification if they pass Congress.
Which is an incredibly high bar to clear. We haven't amended the Constitution since 1992. But it signals fiscal conservatism is top of mind, which ties into the Oversight Committee's hearing on runaway college spending.
Speaking of spending and oversight, we have a hearing titled Fix Our Forests, taking place exactly 1 year after the devastating LA wildfires. This is a retrospective to see if the forest management changes promised last year have actually been implemented.
And on the international stage, we have the Foreign Affairs Committee looking at U.S. policy toward Lebanon and Hezbollah's grip on power. This comes at a time when we have new diplomatic nominations to consider.
That's right. We have a list of nominations from the president, including Brian K. Stimler to be ambassador to the Kyrgyz Republic and Jennifer Wicks McNamara to be ambassador to Vietnam.
Vietnam is a key strategic partner right now as the U.S. continues to diversify supply chains away from China. The ambassador to Vietnam is no longer a low-profile gig. It's a central role in our economic security architecture.
I also want to touch on a raft of good governance bills hitting the Oversight Committee. We're talking about House Resolution 7274, the Federal Acquisition Security Council Improvement Act, and House Resolution 2985, the Modernizing Government Technology Reform Act.
I can hear people tuning out, Victor. Procurement isn't exactly a thriller.
I know, but listen, this is how the government buys computers, secures data, and prevents cyber attacks. House Resolution 5000, the Cybersecurity Hiring Modernization Act, is actually vital. The government has a hard time hiring hackers and cyber experts because the hiring process is so slow. This bill aims to fix that so we aren't outmatched by foreign adversaries. Fair point. If the government's tech doesn't work, nothing else does. Finally, looking at the congressional daily records from January 26th through the 29th, we see the formal documentation of these introductions. For those new to the pod, the congressional record is the official transcript of floor proceedings. It's where we verify exactly what was said, beyond the press releases. And in those records, we saw the introduction of House Resolution 3577, the Legislative Accountability Act. We'll be digging into the text of that one for next week's episode to see exactly who is being held accountable and how.
So what should our listeners watch for in the coming days?
Keep an eye on the housing package. See if the supply bills, the ones cutting red tape, get bipartisan support. That will tell us if Congress is serious about lowering rent prices or just posturing.
And watch the new day at the SEC hearing on February 4th. Depending on how heated that gets, we could see significant volatility in the markets, or new legislative attempts to curb the regulators' power.
We'll be here to break it all down. Thanks for listening to Capital Catch-Up.
See you next time.